Good morning. Last time I did a read aloud, we had the crazy chapter with the newt going on Miss Strunchable and her thinking that it's Matilda. So let's see what happens. This chapter is called The Second Miracle. Matilda did not join to rush in to get out of the classroom. After the other children had all disappeared, she remained at her desk, quiet and thoughtful. She knew that she had to tell somebody about what had happened with the glass. She couldn't possibly keep a gigantic secret like that bottled up inside of her. What she needed was just one person, one wise and sympathetic grown-up who could help her understand the meaning of this extraordinary happening. Neither her mother nor her father would be of any use at all. If they believed her story, and it would be doubtful that they would, they almost certainly would fail to realize what an astounding event it was that had taken place in the classroom that afternoon. On the spur of the moment, Matilda decided that one person she'd like to confide in was Miss Honey. Matilda and Miss Honey were the only two left in the classroom. Miss Honey had seated herself at her table and was riffling through some of her papers. She looked up and said, "Well, Matilda, aren't you going to go outside and play with the others?" Matilda said, "May I please talk to you for a moment?" "Of course you may. What's troubling you?" "Something very peculiar happened to me, Miss Honey." Miss Honey became instantly alert. Ever since these two dinosaur meetings she had Ever since these two disastrous meetings she had recently about Matilda, the first with the headmistress and the second with the dreadful Mr. and Mrs. Wormwood, Miss Honey had been thinking a great deal about the child and wondering how she could help her. And now, here was Matilda standing right in front of her, asking her if she could have a private talk. Miss Honey had never seen her looking so wide-eyed and particular before. "Yes, Matilda," she said. "Tell me what has happened to you that is so particular." "Miss Trunchbull isn't going to get me expelled, is she?" Matilda asked. "Because it wasn't me who put that creature in her jug of water. I promise you it wasn't me." "Oh, I know it wasn't you," Miss Honey said. "Am I going to be expelled?" "I think not," Miss Honey said. "The headmistress simply got a little overexcited. That's all." "Good," said Matilda. "But that isn't what I wanted to talk to you about." "What do you want to talk to me about, Matilda?" "I want to talk to you about the glass of water with the creature in it," Matilda said. "You saw it spilling over Miss Trunchbull, didn't you?" "I did indeed." "Well, Miss Honey, I didn't touch it. I never even went near it." "I know you didn't," Miss Honey said. "You heard me telling the headmistress that it couldn't have possibly been you." Miss Honey, but it was me," Matilda said. "That's exactly what I wanted to talk to you about." Miss Honey paused and looked carefully at the child. "I don't think I quite follow you," she said. "I got so angry at being accused of something I hadn't done that I made it happen." "You made what happen, Matilda?" "I made the glass tip over." "I still didn't quite understand what you mean," Miss Honey asked gently. "I did it with my eyes," Matilda said. "I was staring at it and wishing it to tip over, and then my eyes went all hot and funny, and some sort of power came over them, and the glass just toppled over." Miss Honey continued to look steadily at Matilda through her still-rimmed spectacles, and Matilda looked back at her just as steadily. "I'm not following you, Matilda," Miss Honey said. "Do you mean you actually willed the glass to tip over?" "Yes," Matilda said, "with my eyes." Miss Honey was silent for a moment. She did not think Matilda was meaning to lie. It was more like that she was simply allowing her vivid imagination to run away with her. "You mean you were sitting here where you are now and told the glass to just topple over?" "Something like that, Miss Honey, yes." "If you did that, then it is just about the greatest miracle a person can ever perform since the time of Jesus." "I did, Miss Honey." "It's extraordinary," thought Miss Honey. "How often small children have flights of fancy like this." She decided to put an end to all of it as gently as possible. "Could you do it again?" she asked, not unkindly. I don't know," Matilda said, "but I think I might be able to." Matilda moved the empty glass now to the middle of the table. Should I put water in it? She asked, smiling a little. I don't think it matters, Matilda said. Very well, then. Go ahead and tip it over. It may take some time. Take all the time you want, Miss Honey said. I'm in no hurry. Matilda sat there for a second, in the second row, about 10 feet away from Miss Honey, put her elbows on the desk, and cupped her face in her hands. And this time she gave the order at the beginning. Tip, 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 class, she ordered, but her lips didn't move, and her eyes made no sound. And she made no sound. She simply shouted the words inside of her head. And now she concentrated with the whole of her mind and her brain, wheeling up her eyes at once to be much more quick than she had. What? And so she concentrated. And now she concentrated the whole of her mind and her brain and her will up into her eyes, and once again, but not much more quickly than before, she felt the electricity gathering, the power was beginning to surge, and the hotness was coming into her eyeballs. And then the millions of tiny invisible arms, with hands out that were shooting towards the glass. Without making any sound at all, she kept shouting, shouting, shouting inside of her head to tip it over. She saw it wobble, and then it tilted, and then it toppled right over and fell with a tinkle onto the table, not 12 inches from Miss Honey's folded arms. Miss Honey's mouth dropped wide open, and her eyes stretched so wide that you could see all the whiteness. She didn't say a word. She couldn't. The shock of her seeing such a miracle performed had struck her dumb. She gaped at the glass, leaning well away from it now, as though it might be dangerous. Then slowly she lifted her head and looked at Matilda. She saw the child white in the face, and as white as paper, trembling all over. Her eyes glazed, staring straight ahead and seeing nothing. The whole face was transfigured, the eyes round and bright, and she was sitting there speechless, quite beautiful in a blaze of silence. Miss Honey waited, trembling a little herself, and watching as the child slowly stirred herself back into consciousness. And then suddenly, click, her face went back to look almost super calm. I'm all right, she said and smiled. I'm quite all right, Miss Honey. Don't be alarmed. You seem so far away, Miss Honey whispered, awestruck. Oh, I was. I was flying past the stars on silver wings, Matilda said. It was wonderful. Miss Honey was gazing at the child. Miss Honey was gazing at the child in absolute wonderment, as though she were the creation, the beginning of the world, the first morning. It was much quicker this time, Matilda said quietly. It's not possible, Miss Honey said. I don't believe it. I just simply don't believe it. She closed her eyes and kept them closed for a while, and when she opened them, it seemed as though that she had gathered herself together. Would you like to come back and have tea at my cottage? She said. Oh, Miss Honey, I'd love to. Good. Gather up your things, and I'll meet you outside in a couple of minutes. Oh, no. Hiccups. You won't tell anyone about this thing that I did, will you, Miss Honey? I wouldn't dream of it, Miss Honey said.